Hi, hello, how are you? Thanks for stopping by. Today we're going to talk to some real people about some real things, living real lives, doing real stuff. This is the Working Perspectives podcast. I'm Matt Lavelle, accompanied by my editor and producer, Tom Byers. Today, we are about to experience the finale of the Alex Lavelle epic four-part series known as the Alex Lavelle Experience. If you haven't checked out parts 1, 2, or 3. You can find them on all podcast platforms, YouTube, and Spotify at the Working Perspectives Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at Working Perspectives Podcast and on the Twitter at Working P Pod. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, don't be afraid to email us at workingperspectives@gmail.com, and maybe we'll get you through the PAAA, maybe get you approved, maybe not. It's all up to the PAAA, not up to us. Shake, my man, are you ready or are you ready?
I am ready. Let's do this.
All right, man. Awesome. All right, let's get started. Let's go.
You became a very transient person. We discussed on the previous episode how you spent time in Europe, and then you went to Hawaii.
I was like, I'm not trans. What are you talking about? Oh, yes. Transient traveling. Yes.
Very
yes.
transsexual person. So, and you ended up in Chicago. And as someone who also left home, I moved to California 3 years ago.
Yes.
I had a really hard time preparing to leave. Getting ready, like the months before, I was having a really hard time, like, well, this is the last time I'll see so-and-so or whatever. And then once I got out to California, just whatever was going on took my attention, and I really didn't miss home. I didn't have, and as a kid, I was like a really homesick kid.
Yeah.
I was the kind of kid that would like cry at sleepovers and stuff.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. But like for some reason out here, I loved it. And part of what I would think about, like when I was getting ready to move to California, is you when you moved to Chicago. And how you just handled it. So, I mean, you seemed like you just handled it very easily.
Alex has always been like,
well, boys,
what were
nice
the forces? Yeah. What were the forces involved there? Did you feel like you were being pushed away from Lansdale for various reasons, or did you just want to go check out Chicago because you weren't obsessed with staying in Lansdale?
I don't know. I mean, I think for me, it was like, it never really felt like I didn't have a sense of that being like my landing,
Mm-hmm.
like, Lansdale, Philly, it just wasn't, for me, it wasn't like the final destination. I wanted to go somewhere else and kind of make my mark somewhere else. I don't know. But it didn't, it's weird to say it didn't really feel like home. I mean, it was my home. I loved my house. I love where we grew up, but it just didn't feel like it. It wasn't until I left and came back and was like, oh, like this community, this is where it all started for me. Like this is my home. But now, I mean, I can confidently say like Chicago is my home. Like this is my city. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And but like in preparing to leave, no, it's just something I kind of felt like I had to do. It felt like the right time. And I had already played around with it. I had gone to Hawaii. I had gone away to school, and it was like, it was just time. But the hard part, it wasn't easy, but my friend group had already kind of started to dissolve a little bit. Everybody was starting to kind of go their own separate ways and branch out, and people were less available. And so, we weren't living for the weekend anymore. We weren't living just to party.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it was kind of like an okay time to leave too.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Answer the question? I don't know.
It does. We live in growing up in Lansdale and living in like the greater Philadelphia area, a big theme for some reason, all Northeast cities a big theme is like pride in your city, pride in like the town you grew up in, and defending
Yeah.
it against the other
Yeah.
Northeast cities,
Uh-huh.
as if
Yeah.
like
Not
some
just the
sort of
Northeast, it's everywhere.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
just mean because where we grew up, that's what
In
I saw.
Milwaukee, they're like that too. I'm like, what are you?
Get the fuck out of
Chicago
here,
is when I
Milwaukee.
went there. Chicago, I didn't know this, but the Chicago city flag is like the most popular city flag like there is,
It's
right?
baller. It's so good.
Well, people, and it's about like is it 4 stars represent like the 4 forts that founded Chicago or something like that? But either
4
way,
pillars of Islam.
but either way, the Chicago's flag is like they take a lot of Chicago people take a lot of pride in Chicago, right?
Oh yeah.
So and Philadelphia is the same way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? People in
But that's
Philadelphia are very much,
yeah.
a Philadelphia thing.
And that's what I was trying to say is we have a lot of pride in Lansdale and being from sort of from Philadelphia, and like everyone we know. I think I'm like one of the few people who has never lived in Philadelphia. And
Yeah.
listen, I love Philadelphia. I consider myself from there pretty much. It ain't the prettiest city. There's a lot to
No.
there's a, there's a lot of worse for wear on Philadelphia.
It's the ugliest, apparently. Right?
And when you well, I mean it has great parts.
Did it
of
get
course.
voted the ugliest?
It was voted at one point. It was voted the ugliest, the fattest, the meanest, and the dirtiest,
Yeah.
and the most deadly.
Wow.
The thing is,
Yeah.
when you go to other cities and they're so much newer. When you go out west, like the East
Mhm.
Coast is like being in Europe. It's like old and everything's all brick and old. And
Yeah.
when you start moving out west, everything around here, I live in Southern California, is like, Spanish colonial or whatever, and new looking. But it's also so spacious. That's the other thing. And one thing I heard, I had a buddy who lived in Chicago, and he said after the Great Chicago Fire, it ended up being a blessing in disguise because they were able to widen their streets and have wider streets and to better lay out their public transportation.
Yeah.
And I know,
Which
I
is
visited
pretty
once. But Alex, is there a strong contrast between Philly and Chicago in that regard, and then just in general, how do they compare in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people that Philadelphia is a great city to be from. It's a great place to start because if you can navigate around Philly safely, then you're not. I mean, so when I was like in high school, right, like junior year in high school, is when PD went to Drexel, and Drexel is a pretty dangerous area, that campus.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Jimmy and I, when we would be be like partying, and it'd be the end of the night, and we wanted like Chinese food or something, and we would like run through the neighborhood, but the only blocks we were comfortable walking are blocks where there was a church, because we were like, well, there's a church on this block, it can't be that dangerous. That was like our rule. We would run and get Chinese food. There's like bulletproof glass, and you gotta like you get it, then you go back to this crappy house, and hopefully somebody's awake and they let you in.
Yeah.
But so when we were in Europe and we were in Ireland, and they'd be like, oh, be careful out there. There's people they'll rob you. You gotta be careful. And
They got churches everywhere.
We'd be like, listen, man, like, we're fine. Like, don't worry. Like, we're not worried about some Mick coming up to us. And
when it comes to Philadelphia in that regard, I always thought, so you know how Frank Sinatra in New York says, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, right?
Mhm.
I always felt like if you're tough in Philadelphia, you're tough anywhere, because Philadelphia is a tough city, right? So like if you're tough and can handle yourself in Philadelphia, then you're tough and can handle yourself anywhere. So if you're tough here, you're tough anywhere, kind of thing.
yeah,
So
you gotta
that's what
learn
I
street
always thought
smarts.
about Philadelphia.
Yeah, like if you can
Very much.
navigate around Philly, and then you can apply those skills that you learned to other cities in the world.
You can order a cheesesteak anywhere now.
And
now that
Philly's
we're from
interesting because
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
it's very block by block, right? Like you can be in, 2 blocks over, and you've gone from a fancy,
Shitsville
expensive area
yeah.
into,
In
a
Rittenhouse.
pretty scary
Yeah.
area. And so Chicago is kind of like that, but it's much more spread out. It's much bigger. And so navigating is easier in that regard. I mean, I never really, knock on wood, I don't worry about that shit as much, but
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
being from Philly is great. I wouldn't,
So
for a lot of reasons, I
yeah.
wouldn't necessarily want to land there. It's expensive, and the public
Mm-hmm.
transportation is terrible, and
Awful.
the like, driving is terrible. The roads are
Awful.
rough.
Yeah. People are assholes too. Everyone here is an asshole, and I'm one of them.
Yeah,
I will say. So I agree with you there, Alex. So let's keep this going on. So in Chicago, right?
yeah.
We are supposed to be talking about your job history.
job
So let's kind of do that a little
Sure.
bit. Real quick before we get into that, we'll cut this out. But Alex, are you good to go over time
yeah,
and,
we
and
can
hang
keep
out for a little bit longer?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
cool.
fine.
All right. So you're living in Chicago, right? And when you came here, right, initially you went from being an artistic assistant at Exile in Philly, and then you moved to Chicago, working at the art gallery, working at the coffee place, acting in different shows, and then you graduated Columbia College of Chicago. You stopped the coffee shop, and now you're directing your own show. Can you talk a little bit about how, like, you're managing a coffee shop and directing at the same time? You're in two supervisor leadership roles. Can you talk to us, like, what kind of things you would use and what did you learn while doing those things? And did you transition any kind of things you would learn from GMing the coffee shop to directing the show and vice versa? So go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, like, to just back it up, right? Like, I mean, college was a grind, right? So I had all these jobs just so that I could afford to live in the city and go to school. And so a typical day for me was like wake up at 5, go to the coffee shop, work there until 10, go to class. I'd be in class from like 10 to 5, and then I'd be in rehearsals from about 6 to 11, working on different shows. And I worked on as many shows as I could because I wanted, the experience.
You need the
and then
experience.
between 11 and 12, try to get done some homework, and then wake up and like do it again. And then on the weekends, I would usually do a double. I would work in the morning at the coffee shop, and then at night I would either do a shift at the restaurant, or I would be in rehearsal. And so it was a lot. It was a grind. It was really exhausting. I probably came close to like a couple of mental breakdowns, but learned a lot and was in leadership roles in college, and that was cool. So then when I got out, I stopped working at the art gallery and the coffee shop and trying to trim it down, then blah blah blah. So I'm managing this new spot, and I was directing my first play, which I like crowdfunded. It was a play about a cat who falls in love with his clone.
Did you write it?
No, this was by Noah Heidel. Great, one of my favorite playwrights. It was a cat. It was called Kitty Kitty Kitty. It was about a cat who falls in love with his clone, and then the love is unrequited. They're like separated because it's like the ultimate incest, right? And then he like clones himself again and again and again, and each time he clones himself, it's like they're a little more of like a bizarro version of him. And anyway, it was a really interesting piece, produced on off nights at a gay bar in Chicago.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty stellar production, if I do say so. And it's also where I met my husband. So not met, but it's the first show
Very
I
cool.
directed him. I met him at school.
You directed it? Were you in it? And was he in it?
No, I directed it. I directed, produced, stage managed, like all of it. But I had worked at some bigger
Yeah.
theaters, but like the way to break into and people don't let you direct
Yeah.
unless you already have
Force them
directed.
to.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the way to already have directed is to produce your own shows. And so that's
Yeah.
what I did. We like crowdfunded the money for it just for like the rights and then all the costumes, all that stuff. And then so were the skills applicable? I was like at this point bad at both jobs, right? Because it was like everything was new. I had never like really managed before. I had at the pool company, but that was like driving around
Yeah.
one-on-one. It wasn't like I wasn't scheduling people. I wasn't, dealing with that kind of crap. I wasn't checking
Right.
people's like side work every day and also like waking up early in the morning to manage this store and make sure everything was running and we didn't run out of supplies and all that stuff. So what was applicable, I guess, was just kind of like putting on your boss pants, so to speak. I was really uncomfortable being disliked, and as a manager or as someone in charge, you have to learn to get
Yeah.
comfortable with that because you're not always going to be able to please everybody or to give the popular
Yeah.
decision in favor of what's right for whatever you're working on.
Yeah.
And so that was something I struggled with a lot in those early days. The show ended up getting produced and I ended up leaving that job right around the
Yeah.
time that the show premiered because I was like,
So
F this
let's
noise.
talk about that. So you left the coffee shop, right? And then did you get a
Yeah.
job at UPS while after leaving the coffee shop?
Yeah, I didn't really leave on the best terms, like with the owners.
Ooh.
Like we weren't getting along. There was a lot going on, and I was like,
It seems like they asked you to kind of run it for them, and
yeah,
that's
I kind
like,
of like, yeah, when I took it on, it was my first management job, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna need a lot of attention. I'm gonna need like a lot of your help because I've never done this before, and like you're asking me to just
yeah,
kind of step on and do it, and there wasn't really any training. There's no book or anything, so I was like, and it was like a mom and pop kind of. It was now they've got a couple locations, but at the time it was like their first location, and there wasn't really any
yeah,
procedures or processes. And so I was like, yeah, like we need more attention. The business needs more attention. It wasn't just me. The business just needs more attention. And that was where we would get into arguments because they just were pulled in a bunch of different directions and didn't have the energy and didn't have and so it ended up, I just was like, you know what, this isn't working. I gotta go.
yeah,
Is kind of how that ended. And so didn't have anything lined up. Not the
yeah,
first time that I was like, screw this, I'm out. But I
yeah,
just relied on like, I'll land on my feet, I'll find something. And
yeah.
so I
Having the
found it.
courage to do that though is something that, like, you went to Chicago kind of the same way. You're like, all right, I'll get here and I'll
I
make it
know.
work.
I
So
know.
having the courage to do that, like some people would kind of eat the shit at the coffee shop and not focus on directing the show or whatever they value that's more important. But you were like, no, fuck this. I'm doing what I think's more important. And this coffee shop, they're kind of using me, so I'm done being used and I'm going to move on and I'll make it work. And you made it work at UPS and you started directing the show. And then, as
Yeah.
you said, you met Carson, right?
Mhm.
And,
Well,
and
I want to
started
touch on
like,
that though, like just what
okay,
you're saying though too is I could do that because I also had support. I knew that I wasn't going to die because I wasn't going to end up on the streets because my mom, my family, my dad would never let that happen. My brothers,
Yeah.
if I really ran into like was in dire straits, I knew I could fall back on my family. It wasn't a plan. That's not something I would want to do and probably not responsible for me to like just be like, screw this, I'm out. But, and I scrambled, I got a job right away, but like that's a luxury, having that safety net because
Yeah.
not everybody has it. So
For
it's
sure.
not that I, in the back of my mind, knowing I wasn't going to starve leaving, you know, is definitely something that helped give me that courage, right? To be like, all right,
yeah,
peace out.
yeah,
So So it's not like, it wasn't this supreme act of bravery or anything like that. It was just like, all right, I don't have to put up with this shit. I'm not going to. I got to go. I'll find something else,
Yeah.
And so I did, landed at UPS, which was another hilarious. I worked like the front desk at UPS. It was like terrible pay, but it was just something. I'm a strong believer that having a job makes you more hireable. So if you're not employed, get out some type of job that doesn't eat up all of your time, and then you'll have some money coming in, and then you can look for something else.
All right, fans, time for a break in the action. We're bringing back our favorite segment. It's called 90 Seconds of 90 Day Fiance, where we talk about a show on TLC where immigrants try and trick ugly Americans to marry them to get green cards. Our good friend, Party Boy Pete McCormick, is here to tell about some of the awesome stories from that show. Party Boy Pete, what's the story?
What's up, party people? This is Party Boy Pete McCormick with 90 Seconds of 90 Day Fiance, and today we will be talking about Elizabeth and Andre. Elizabeth is from Florida, and Andre is from Moldova. If you're wondering about Moldova, Moldova is where dreams go to die and where Florida ugly ducklings go to find their fiance. When they get back to America, Andre doesn't want to find a job. Elizabeth's family pays for him to become a trucker, which he abandons, to become a handyman, which he abandons, to become a stay-at-home dad. He keeps changing jobs. As I said, Elizabeth isn't the most attractive of the sisters. You can find out how attractive the other sisters are on their OnlyFans page. Yes, all of them have OnlyFans pages. Everyone in the family has also been arrested, and when they go to Moldova for the wedding, they're upset at the food. They think it's peasant food because it's not McDonald's, and instead it's croissants and fresh fruit. Anyway, that's 90 Seconds of 90 Day Fiance. Back to you, Matt.
All right, and that was 90 Seconds of 90 Day Fiance with a good friend, Party Boy Pete McCormick. Now, back to the show. Okay, so you're still directing your shows. You're working at the UPS at the counter. You meet, who is your husband now, Carson, in the show, and you guys kind of hit it off and stuff like that. But then, you worked then you moved on and worked as the assistant at an interior design producer. And you were there for like 8 months, right?
Yeah. While working at UPS, I met somebody who owned his own design company, and they were looking for someone to help with their trade shows. So the title was assistant trade show manager. So what we would do is travel around to different cities, and we would set up the trade show booth with all of this beautiful interior design materials. So anything from sculptures to rugs to lampshades to, weird felt birds, just all this stuff. Just a ton of stuff. But we would set up and make a beautiful showroom. So with my background from the gallery, with working at UPS and packing and all that stuff, I was a good fit with my artistic.
Yeah, what a
background.
fit. That's kind
It was a good fit, but it was
ideal candidate, literally.
Yeah, but it was also also be careful looking for, if something's too good to be true, it might be too good to be true. It was I took the job because I was going through a lot. I mean, I was ending a relationship that I had been in for years. I was starting a new relationship, and I just wanted to get the hell out of Chicago and the hell out of Dodge, essentially, and all the shit that I was dealing with. And just so much had happened. And so I just wanted, and this job gave me the opportunity to travel. So I was going to different cities. Nice. We were going to Vegas, North Carolina,
kind of kept it moving.
Atlanta. Yeah.
Yeah, those convention centers are wild. I'd never been to them before, and I went to an automotive marketing conference there once.
Yeah,
it was quite an experience.
It's cool.
No shit. It is sounding cool. I've been to the gun show and things like that. Those are always kind of badass, Those are fun. So okay. So you're working for this guy. You're there for like 8 months. Then is this after the 8 months? You kind of are like, all right, I just need to get the
No, I
fuck
was
out.
there for like a month, and I was like, I don't like this. I was like, this
Really?
is not a good fit, because when we weren't traveling and doing the trade shows was exhausting, and it was like back breaking,
Work, yeah.
yeah, like 18-hour days, like just like slugging it out. Once we set up the trade shows, then we would work the trade shows, and so that was retail. Well, wholesale.
Yeah.
Then we're doing like wholesale, and so I'm like, then I'm dressed up and I'm like, selling thousands of dollars worth of products to people on the floor. So it just never ended, and it was exhausting. And then by the time we get back, they'd be like, okay, take a day off. You've been working for 2 weeks straight. Take a day off. And then come into the office. And then the next day we'd come in with this big warehouse. It's freezing, and it's in K-Town in Chicago, which is like far southwest in Chicago. It's not southwest, but like, yes, south from where I am. I live on the north side, and far west. And so it is like the equivalent of North Philly in that regard.
Yeah,
like
Chirac.
There's a lot of very, a lot of vacant homes. This, facility, this warehouse that we were at, it was like needed to be locked up very tightly every night, and it had been robbed before of like, they took the copper pipes and all that stuff out, and like,
Jesus.
Yeah, so it was like it was a seedy area. I remember I was like walking one time, and I was like looking down at my phone, and this guy walked by me. He's like, yo, like, keep your head up when you're like walking around. I was like, oh shit, yeah, you're right. Like, thank you for that, sir. Head is up.
Damn. That was nice of him. That wouldn't have happened in Philadelphia, I'll tell you that.
Well, I mean, there's good
Midwest hospitality.
But
he was like, keep your head up, white boy. Keep moving.
And it was like a mile walk from the train to the warehouse, and so there was that. But like, it also took me like an hour and a half to get out there using public transit. It was just it was
a nightmare.
It was so that sucked. Then being there was a whole bunch of reasons why it just wasn't great. If it became like a prison sentence, I felt like I couldn't quit because I had just left one job and then another job, and I was like, no, I gotta stick this out. But I knew it wasn't working. And then the light bulb went off like 3 months in, probably, where I was like, you know what? I don't have to do this. Like, I really don't have to do this. Like, I feel like I do, but I really don't. I have other options. And I called mom that day, and I was like, you know what? Like, hey, how about I come home for the summer? How about I just spend the summer at home? And like, how do you feel about this? You know what I mean? Like, I have no, like, at that point, I had, my ex had the apartment. Carson and I had been dating for a couple months, but it was like, right?
Would you bring Carson over?
What? No, I had moved in with a friend. My ex had the apartment. I had moved in with a friend, and Carson and I were like really getting close, but it was like, I can't do this. And
you needed like some reflection time, some you time. So you kind of like you just kind of left Chicago for the summer, came back home, came to your roots, and then when you were here, did you realize like, you know what, I miss Carson, and you're
I mean, the plan was always to come back. I knew I bought a return ticket, when I came out. I knew that. I always do that when I travel. I book the return ticket so that I know, all right, like, you gotta come back. And I knew I had to come back to Chicago. And it was, I had a great summer at home. It was really nice to be with everybody and, be with some of my old friends. I hadn't spent a lot of time with them in like 6 years at this point, or 5 years. And so I was like, yeah, this is great. And when I came back to Chicago, unemployed with like no money again, like
Yeah.
for round two, it kind of really felt like I was starting over. Didn't have an apartment, just had like some good friends, and you know, and I had a boyfriend at the time who I was like really in love with, and who I'm now married to. And it was like, you know, we just got to figure it out. And so I got another job at a different, I did some random shit, like, you know, like some kind of like a tasker almost kind of thing, like just some odd jobs,
Yeah.
painting like a friend's apartment or doing this just to
Yeah.
get a couple $100 here. And I got another job at another coffee shop. And this time and then I decided to start my own business as
Ooh.
selling skincare,
All right.
network marketing.
Called Xander
Okay.
Co.
It was, and so I was going around and essentially like doing those parties where like you give people, because I wanted to be my own boss, and I was like, and it got sold to me. I was like, this will be the thing. And honestly, I learned so much from doing that, right? About like relationships with people.
Yeah.
But it was you know, I never made any money. I didn't make any money.
Yeah.
I spent money. I mean, maybe I made my money back that I spent,
Yeah.
but you know, did that.
Now, were you still doing theater stuff at this time, or when you?
No, this
you
was
went
like I
back?
kind of started a slow divorce from theater. I'd been doing theater for free, essentially in Chicago. I was assisting a lot on shows, but you
Yeah.
know,
Didn't you do
I
work
was-
at Second City at one point? Like you interned there, or?
no, I didn't intern. No, that's through my school that you can, but no, I had friends that worked at Second City, but I
How'd
didn't.
they like it?
They liked it. I mean, it's a cool company.
Yeah. It's got like a
Dana
legacy.
Carvey would
you know.
slap them every
No, I
day.
liked. I had people that I worked at like well-known theaters in the city. But you know, you can only do so much work for free.
Yeah. That's what-
where you have to eat. Like if I didn't have to pay my bills, right? It would have been and if I was like willing to kind of sacrifice certain dreams of, for me, I felt like home ownership, things that I wanted to do. I didn't want to be, you know, in my 30s and not be able to go out to eat ever. You know what I mean? Like, so there was things I wanted to do, and it was like,
it couldn't just be
man.
a hobby for you. Like it's not the kind of thing it would nicely fit into like a hobby. You know?
I mean, it could for some people, I guess, but you have to be able to afford your life, and
you
it's
can't
hard
produce
to
a whole production and direct it.
It's
and all
hard
of
to
that.
do both. And I tried. I did. I tried to do that, but juggling the different jobs, and so so I kind of like slowly had to leave that, and it sucked because it was a passion of mine. It was something that I really was falling in love with, was you know, just being in that rehearsal room. And you know, but I also learned a lot of things about that industry as well, where for me, you know, you make this show and maybe a couple hundred people see it, at least at that time in those small theaters. I mean, then there's a show every once in a while, there's a show like Hamilton or like Les Mis or something that comes around, and it really, wow, like has this big impact on the world and culture. But
Very
more
rare, though.
often than not, you're working on a show that's been made before, and a couple hundred people will see it, and it's important. It is important. But as theater people, you know, we tell ourselves like, you know, the art is so important, and you, but it's so for me, at least for me, not for everybody, but for me, it was so self-serving. I felt like I needed to make something of myself doing these things and creating this and being an artist. And it was so much about me. And I don't know, it just, it wasn't fitting. And so I just had to walk away from it, I had to leave it. And that sucked. That was shitty. And I've even thought about you know, going back. I thought about getting my master's degree in directing, right? And because I went to
Yeah.
school for directing, and I wanted to, maybe if I get my master's degree, then maybe somebody will hire me.
Yeah, write a screenplay or something, you know?
The reality is, you know, when I was in college, my competition was my professors. When I get out, they're working professionals in the city too. Everybody's looking for a job.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I have professors I'm still
Jesus.
friends with. I have one that's a good friend of mine, and she's you know, great, has had a lot of what I would say a lot of success, right?
Yeah.
And still it's a grind, you know, it's a struggle
Mhm.
where you're, you know, worried about what your next thing is going to be until you get to like a certain level. You're always kind of worried about it, and maybe
Yeah.
your goals of having kids or having a family, you've got to kind of sacrifice that. And I wanted more
Yeah.
options.
And that's got to be so
Yeah.
tough. It's got to be so tough, like balancing that with, you know, we interviewed Murph Meyer, who is a
Yep.
comedian actor who's been on a bunch of like things on TV, self-described D-list actor,
Yeah.
but he's been in like Rebel Wilson movies and stuff. Great
Yeah.
dude, but he was on the Chris Gethard show, and he was like their
Yeah.
announcer guy. And I was
Yeah.
talking to him about that because I'm very interested in how it is a business, but then you have to, at the snap of a finger, be incredibly creative and come up with things that are not necessarily like money oriented. like
Yeah.
for example, you had to start a Kickstarter to pay for this production that you put together.
Sure, yeah. It's pretty
And then-
normal in the theater world.
Yeah,
But yeah.
and that's what, like, it's like a special talent to be able to do that and deal with money and budgets and all that shit. And then at the snap of a finger, be like, oh yeah, so it's a cat that clones himself, and he keeps hitting on the cats, and the cats don't want to talk to him, so he keeps cloning them, and they're like bizarre.
It's a show about
And-
unrequited love.
Yeah, and yeah,
Yeah.
Strikes at the heart of
and
all of
it's
us.
interesting because we come, like, you know, like you said, we come from a mix of a white collar, blue collar neighborhood where people are like, put your fucking head down and work and make money
Mhm.
and buy a home and do all this stuff. And it's like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's like, well, I'm gonna do that, but I also have this other interest where I want to come up with something where a cat fucking clones itself, and I'm gonna somehow try to make money out of it.
Yeah.
And
That's
Yeah.
I'm
what
very
killed
impressed
me.
by people that can do that kind of stuff.
Agreed.
Honestly, like,
Very
that
much
was
agreed.
that was the killer for me. Actually, was I would work on these shows like for free, you know,
Mm-hmm.
for free for months, as an assistant director or whatever I was on the production to get experience, and then I would go and we put these shows on, and like the last thing we would do before the curtain is we would ask for money. So we would create these shows,
Oh.
and we we would create these shows, we would sell tickets, people would come watch the show,
Jesus.
and then we'd ask for money. And the idea of my whole life having to ask people for money,
Mm-hmm.
my
Yeah.
whole life was like, I don't know if I can do this. I would
Yeah.
rather. So for me, I'm like, you know what? Where I'm at now, I'm like, screw it. I would rather make a ton of money and then be the guy giving money to the theater companies, being like,
Yeah.
hey, put this play on. Let's do this. Hey,
Yeah.
I got an
Yeah.
idea. Let's
Agreed.
do it. Because that's, you know, I mean, I'm not all about like, oh, you know, it's all about money, right? I don't believe in that, but I think I was in this mindset. I had all these weird thoughts around money. Money is evil. To be an artist, rich people suck. I used to say that all the time. Rich people suck. All this stuff. I'm totally have like 180'd from that now. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
like I do not want to be a person that is like constantly having to ask for favors from other people. And
Yeah.
that
Agreed.
was something that it just didn't sit well with me. I was doing all this work, you know, and then in the end, I'm always feeling like I'm having to ask for a favor, ask for help. And there are actors on
Yeah.
Broadway, right, who at the end of their shows are asking for donations to give to, you know, different you know, nonprofits that are set up to help actors that are struggling and all this. It's like, you know, that is that industry.
Jesus.
And it's tough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
It's really like you always have your hand out, it seems, you know,
well,
like
it is it's a hard thing in the not especially in the nonprofit, you know, theater theater
Yeah.
world, right? Um and hats off to people that stick with it and that do it. And
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
I still, a part of me does miss it and does like regret and wish that maybe I could have had a different trajectory that would keep me in it sometimes. But then a part of me
Mhm.
is like, oh God, I mean, especially right now with COVID, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
dodged a bullet there. Like live
Jesus.
performances, like,
Well,
no, I don't want to produce a Zoom
yeah.
play right now, you know?
Yeah.
Although it
So
might be really cool. Probably could.
let's do that though. Let's get into some of this. So after you did the air bond, then you were selling like the air bond stuff to
Arbonne, yeah.
Arbonne to this realtor guy, and he offered you a job as an executive assistant, right?
Uh-huh.
And then you left the coffee place, the next coffee shop. Then you worked as a realtor for like a year, but then you
Executive
got a
assistant,
job or executive assistant for like a year. Then you got a job at an Ethiopian restaurant
I
as
know.
a GM, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
how
I have a
so
very impressive resume of jumping around to a
yeah.
lot of different jobs.
Yeah, people don't know when they talk to you how full of shit you actually are, but you really, you can sell yourself well. But I'm not gonna lie, went to this when we went to your wedding. We met the owner of the Ethiopian restaurant and went
Uh-huh.
there, and she was just the best, man. She
Yeah.
was
Salt of the
awesome.
earth. Yeah.
So like, yeah, working for someone like that, and also that's a very unique cultural kind of restaurant
Yeah.
to work for. Like I've never even been or seen an Ethiopian restaurant. So having you like the experience of working in that culture and like being around that, and that must have been like very cool and very fun. And I feel like when I see like those kind of thing, like the Ethiopian restaurant, right? Like, is there a big Ethiopian population in Chicago?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So then so you're getting a lot of people that are like, oh, I want to try Ethiopian food. But then you're also getting people like, oh, I miss home so much. Like this place reminds me of home and I love it. And, like they have their whole culture going with them. So you're kind
Yeah.
of like almost an ambassador of the Ethiopian culture in a way, right? Like they brought you
Sure.
into their culture and then you were able to like share their culture with other people
I
while
mean,
you're
that was
working at
part
the
of
restaurant. That must have been pretty cool.
yeah, that was part of what I would say to the staff, right? Is like we're all representing that while we're here. Specific,
Yeah.
like the majority of my serving staff was from either Ethiopia or Eritrea, right? So this was their culture, and so
Ethiopia, what was the second place?
Eritrea.
Okay, and is that next to Ethiopia?
Eritrea, yeah, it is like the Portugal of
Yeah, Matt.
Okay.
It's like the
So shut your
neighboring.
fucking mouth! Like you
You
fucking
know,
knew where
it is
Eritrea
like
was. I
what
thought it was
Pakistan is to
that was the country
India,
from Neverending
what
Story.
Canada is to the US.
Get a globe.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
they're neighboring countries. They were once the same country, and
Great. Okay. So go ahead. You're saying the staff that they're all representatives of Ethiopia, kind of. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I mean that was part of what we talked about. People come there to have an experience, and they're experiencing the food as well as the culture, and so it's on us to share that with them. So I became pretty well versed in it, but like so I worked a year. I did these jobs where I was hopping around paycheck to paycheck, coffee shops, doing whatever I could, doing the grind. Tried to start my own business on like a shoestring budget with like, a dream, a hope, and a prayer. And, that was asking for money too. I was asking people to buy expensive skincare products that they don't need over and over again. And I hate to say it, I'm sorry for anybody who's selling skincare. Yes, we all need skincare. Well, do we need it? I don't know, but we all could use it in some ways.
Not the buyer's men.
But they're not the buyer's men. They do. They need lotioning and oiling. So they so that was another thing where I was like, God damn it, here I am asking for money again, and I'm asking for favors again. That's all that is. Hey, can I have a party at your house? And it'll be really fun, I promise. And I'll bring a present.
Yeah.
And I was good at it because people, I know how to be nice.
You know how to bullshit and
He's a wooer.
Yeah. Yeah. And
he's a fucking schmoozer, this kid.
but was it helping people? No. Right. And then I got into real estate. Real estate is a really cool industry. You actually, if you're good at your job, you actually are helping people, and that's really cool.
That's a good point.
Right.
Yeah.
But the problem that I was in there was like, it was such a far cry from anything artistic, anything that I had been doing, anything that like math. It was so much about numbers in that at that point, and so much about, and again, about who you know and making those connections.
So
but
are you saying that the Ethiopian restaurant finally gave you something that wasn't just either super artistic or super money oriented, and you actually had to experience humans and
it was very cool. I mean, it was like so for 3 years I was there, and it was like every day
you're providing a service. I
grew up in the service industry, so that was like natural to me.
What's the big sorry for interrupting you, what's the big Ethiopian dish? And forgive me for my ignorance. I consider myself an amateur cook, and I remember one time I got a recipe for an Ethiopian dish that involved tomatoes and had an egg on top of it. Is this ringing a bell?
Ethiopian dish, tomatoes with an egg on top. Oh, was it durawat?
It was in a big skillet.
Of course.
Well, you wouldn't. It's a hard-boiled egg.
You eat it a lot with
if you just cracked an egg on top of it. Was that what they said to do?
Listen, you listen to me, damn it. This was on a HelloFresh, and it said, we know your honky ass don't know how to make this.
It said that?
It said it. I was so offended.
It really did say that? That's amazing.
I'll tell you what. These services now, they have all the data. They knew exactly.
I don't know. I mean, like, normally the eggs are hard boiled, and you like the traditional dish. The most famous Ethiopian dish is probably durawat, and it has hard boiled eggs in it and tomato. But I don't know what that one was. It could have just been Ethiopian inspired.
The neighborhood that you were in, was it like, I know you said that there were Ethiopian community there, but did this?
I'm still there. That's my hometown.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did this dig into like the foodie contingent as well? Did you have a lot of like hipsters and stuff rolling in?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was the best Ethiopian restaurant in Chicago, still is. And so we would get people. The majority of our clientele was not Ethiopian, and I took that as a good sign, because when in any restaurant where it's like an ethnic restaurant and it's traditional, they do things differently than in the US. And so to fit with US culture, right? Like, we have certain standards around service. We have certain, health and safety regulations that you have to follow. That you might not have to follow in another country. And so getting people with the program of like, hey, this is what we need to do. That was part of my job. Like, making sure that when people walk in, they get the same experience each time, or the same quality, we could say, each time. And we have a standard of, you need to get to the table within a minute, like that kind of thing, that are common across the service industry, but not common inside of the culture. So I took that as a good sign. But also, we wanted to make sure that if someone from Ethiopia did come, that they felt like it was a good representation. The food needs to be good. We need to hit the marks in terms of Ethiopian service, which are different. There was a lot that went into it. Sorry, I could talk about it all day. But the coolest thing for me was, I was the only native-born American employee. I was the only native English speaker. I was the only white person for the majority of my time there. And this was with 30 people on.
That's awesome.
That's a cool experience.
That's great. That's fantastic. That's the kind of stuff that I love. When you're
so it was cool. I felt like I was in a different country every day. I was listening to like foreign music every day. I
Yeah.
was eating foreign food every day, and I was learning something new, and I actually, it's so funny because I met a friend for lunch today. We had Ethiopian, and like I'm like, shit, I forget some of the language, but I picked it up pretty quick. I mean, it's like when you
Mhm.
really learn about a culture, when you really learn about something, it just expands kind of your understanding
Hmm.
of the world
Yeah.
a little bit more. And so I started to see Africa, people from Africa, whole different. I now,
Yeah.
before walking into to that restaurant, before that experience, I couldn't tell you if someone's from, I can maybe tell you someone from Africa versus, someone from the US, but I couldn't tell you what part of Africa they're from.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I could now. Yeah, I
Yeah.
could tell you, at least I could give you like a general idea. I could tell you who's
Yeah.
from Ethiopia and who's not. You know, because we don't, and I was talking about this today, we're not trained to look at the subtleties of different cultures. Whereas we can look at European culture, right, and say, oh, this person looks Irish. They're definitely Irish. Oh no, they're Italian. Oh,
Yeah.
that they're probably Polish.
Yeah.
German.
You know what I mean? We can
Yeah.
pick out those subtleties, but
Yeah.
can you do that for
Central and South
African,
America get the same
Asian?
thing.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
can you do that for other cultures? We're not really taught how to do that. And
Yeah.
so for me, a whole different world opened up of, oh shit, like right in front of my eyes, there's been this whole
Mhm.
subculture,
Mhm.
walking. I cannot walk down the street in my neighborhood without seeing somebody who's Ethiopian.
Yeah.
I would have never known that before,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and that's
I'm that way
now.
with
But now
Albanians now too.
the double edge is like, now I walk around and I'm like, if I'm outside of Chicago, especially, I'm like looking. I'll be like looking for an Ethiopian person. I'm like, where are they? Maybe I can talk to them. I became like a nerd, like a junkie for the
So
interaction.
So I'm glad. So that's awesome that you had that experience there, and like from everything I've heard about the Ethiopian culture, that a lot of them are just they're phenomenal people. All right, fans, time for a break in the action to enjoy one of our best segments. This is The Date You Hate with our good friend Joshua Bach. Hey, Joshua, what's the date and what do you hate?
The date is March 21st, 1346. I got out of bed today and I saw my mother was dead. Her face looks like a freaking pineapple. Come to find out that there's this thing going around called the bubonic plague. Get this. So I walk outside today to hear the latest news and a horse steps on my damn foot. Now my foot's swelling up. It looks like my mother's face. And that's the date, and that's what I hate.
All right, that was The Date You Hate with our good friend Joshua Bach. Now, back to the show. So, but let's keep it going. So, you were 3 years at Ethiopian restaurant, right? You're a GM. Then you said, screw it, I'm joining the army. And so you joined the army, the United States Army, not any other
Reserves.
army.
The Army Reserves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you joined the United States Army Reserves,
Mhm.
and while during Army training, COVID hit.
Yeah. Mhm.
Talk about that a little bit. Why? What made you want to join the Army? What kind of
Yeah.
things were you learning there? How did you fit in the Army? And then talk about COVID in the Army.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll say like the working in the restaurant, that was like the most eye-opening job I ever had. I was there the longest. I managed 30 people. There was a lot of differences I needed to navigate, and I needed to really, the biggest thing I learned that really like reinforced what I learned that I had gotten from my first stint in management, but I guess I couldn't put words to it, was if you say you care about people that work for you, then you actually have to care about them. You actually have to invest. You cannot treat people like numbers on a spreadsheet. You can't treat people like they're your problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
You need to treat them like, it doesn't mean you can't hold them accountable. It doesn't mean you can't
Sure.
have tough conversations. I had to have a bunch of those. It sucked. But
Yeah.
but you need to care, you need to invest. And so that was for me, I got really invested. I'm still, every month at least I touch base with probably there's a lot going on in Ethiopia right now. There's a civil war happening, which is
Jesus.
crazy, and it's really affecting the folks that I work that were my employees and the owner of the restaurant. It's really sad. Um, but so I'm touching in with them still, every other week, like just to be like, hey, how are you? Have you talked to your family? Like, what's going on? So you have to care. And that was the biggest thing. I learned so much about myself from that job because I failed at so many different things. I made so many
Sure.
mistakes. That was the best thing. But then so I knew I needed a change because there was also nowhere to go. I was the GM of the
Yeah.
restaurant. I wasn't going to become the owner of the restaurant anytime soon. I didn't want to own the restaurant. I didn't want to own a restaurant on my own. So I knew it was like, all right, I've learned what I can from this, and I want to do my own thing. I gotta go. Um, but I wanted an experience that was going to push me. I felt like there was something that I just hadn't done yet. And so the military came in as an option to like grow and learn and push myself again out of my comfort zone. And I wanted to, it's been such a heightened political state in the country.
Yeah.
And one thing I, thought about was I wanted to see more people like me in the military, more people with my experiences, my understanding of the world in government and everything. And I was like, well, the way to do it is to do it. So that kind of pushed me to do it. I was very intentional about the job I wanted to do. And I was lucky that the Army really worked with me. I got a great recruiter and I got to kind of pick what I was going to do. I got a lot of time, a lot of
Yeah.
lead time. I got married in between, signing my contract and going to training. So
Yeah.
then I'm at training, and COVID hits. I mean,
Oof.
training is tough, but then
Yeah.
COVID hits, and honestly, I couldn't have. The hardest part was worrying about people on the outside, because we're getting our news from people that hate us, the drill sergeants. So like we're getting like
Were you allowed to have phones and stuff?
it's no, you didn't have phones. You got one
Oh,
phone call a month, for 5 minutes and then 10 minutes. And then when COVID hit, they gave us like an hour to call. Um, and then, graduation was coming and they had to cancel graduation, but we were pretty
yeah.
much already
Yeah.
quarantined,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I was, I'm in my 30s, right? And there's kids there that were 18 and they had been dreaming of this graduate. They didn't go to college. They went to the military. So this graduation
Yeah.
was important for them. And maybe they didn't
Yeah.
even go to their high
That
school
sucks.
graduation. And so, so
That
that they could
sucks,
go to the
man.
military, like it was, so this was a big moment for them. And the drill sergeants were actually very cool about that. And it was a really humbling experience that, getting through training. And there's a ceremony that they do at the end of basic where you get your like soldier patch, right? And you're officially done all your requirements for training. And, the drill sergeant comes up and like puts the patch on your arm. It's a bullshit patch. It's stupid. They make fun of it, but it's a symbol
Still.
that you went through training.
Yeah.
And they're talking about all of and I never, we grew up in a military family, but I never connected with that as like part of who I am, especially being gay. I was like, that's not me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
don't ask, don't tell, fuck them. Like, I'm never going to do that. And, but then I'm there during this training, we just got done this big exercise and they're playing this like dramatic music and they're hanging tassels on the flag. And each of them represents a conflict that the United States Army had been in. And they're naming conflicts that my dad was in. And they're naming conflicts that my grandfather was in. And I realized, holy shit, I'm part of this now. And it really hit me. And I did not expect to get emotional, but in that moment, that was like a pretty emotional moment for me. It really like connected where I felt, like I felt like I was part of something.
You are. Yeah. You're part of the greatest army in, the history of the world. You're part of serving for the country and providing the service that provides freedom for everybody. That's not to be neglected or laughed at, and it is a great thing, and it's something that you should be proud of, and that we were proud of you that you did it, and kept it going, because I didn't go to the military, neither did our older brother Asshole or our sister Natalie. So like would have been the only one that did go into the service, where our dad, pretty much everyone in their family went into the service, and then our uncle on our mom's side went into the service. So like, we do have a lot of history with the service, and it's really good that you went in there and you were able to accomplish that and get through that, and you should be very proud of that, and we were very proud that you did that, and I'm happy that you got some emotional fulfillment and everything out of it, because you should.
And now on to the next thing. This is where Matt like recaps it, and he's like, "That's really, really great, and we've got to get on to the next thing right now." You talked too long.
You didn't. Hey, do you want to talk more about it?
Yes, actually, what I'd like to say. No, yeah, I mean, for me, it's less about being part of like the greatest army in the world, which yes, and it was more of a family legacy thing. That's what I felt connected to in a different way. That like was emotional for me.
What has the Army, because I'm not up to date on this, what has the Army done with Don't Ask, Don't Tell? They did away with it in the Obama years?
Yeah, the Army is very clear about a lot of things. It's very clear about sexual harassment, to avoid lawsuits and to avoid like, and to improve, but they focus so much on the culture. And there's still, bad habits. There's still things, the Army wasn't always that way. So it had to change and adapt. And it's hard to change such a big thing, but they certainly do. I mean, I was really impressed with that part of the training. I did not have any negative experiences. I will say, you still have 18-year-old, 19-year-old guys and girls that are talking, locker room talk, or talking like they're saying shit. There's this one kid that I've almost got into a fight with in like the first or second week. He was like this tough kid who was like, he'd be like, "Yo, that slaps. That slaps." That was like, that's the thing that they're saying. "Oh, that smacks. That smacks so hard. That slaps." That's when something's really cool, it slaps. I'm not saying it right. I was like the old guy that would be like, "Hey guys, that slaps."
That's some good slapping going on right there, buddy.
Yeah. Shall I say
You're
it?
really slapping it, pal.
That really smacks hard, doesn't it, sir? No, but this kid, we did not hit it off, right? But then he was hilarious. I actually started to we became good friends, and he would say shit like, this one guy, I mean, I shouldn't say this, but anyway, there was this one guy who nobody really liked, and he was kind of a rank higher than us, but he was still in training, and he was like, the drill sergeant called him over for something, and he was like running by, and this kid goes like, he's like, "Damn, man, he's running like he's got a dick in his ass." And I was like, and I looked at him, I go, "What's wrong with that?" And he like started laughing, and it's like, he's like, "Oh shit, man, I'm sorry." And I was like, "I don't give it." Like, he was like, "Is
that how it looks?
Yeah,
is that how it looks?"
I was like,
that's great, dude. That is, but that's people bring. Yeah, but that's like kind of like you guys going through the struggle together and it uniting you in a common, like you just learn as we guys like.
Well, like I felt like one thing that I had like a part of myself or a part of my identity that I felt like I kind of lost in coming out, which was like being one of the boys, and so. And that was something that I felt like I got back from the military. I got back from training, because when you're in that situation, you don't care what somebody's politics are. You care about who's going to have your back, who's going to, are they carrying their own weight? Are they, like, do they have a good attitude? Like, what are they helping the team? Or are they hurting it? Do you care more about that shit? Then, I mean, I walked out with a lot of friends with different political views than me, and it didn't matter as much. I was like, you know what? Like, That's
all
fine.
part of the same team.
Yeah. Whereas before that, it was like, it's like in Chicago here.
You felt like you had to like kind of stand up for your
Well,
team.
we've got a
with the, like,
mentality right now that's saying, it's so funny. I was just talking to a friend. She is in the Ethiopian community. They're in this civil war right now. And she is normally very vocal about things, but she's been feeling like she doesn't want to be vocal. She was getting a lot of shit from both sides. And I was like, I get it, because you're playing into it. You're playing into that game, that divisiveness, and you're not even seeing people as people anymore. You're seeing them as their opinion on this topic, and it's really there's so much more to it. There might be someone we agree politically. Do I want to go into war with them? Hell no. No. No, no, no. You know what I mean? Because they're a piece of shit when it comes to other stuff. They don't fucking know how to make their bet, but like, so it doesn't, so you start to realize, like, what makes us a community, or what makes us, and it's not so much, it's not always our opinions. It's who can you count on. And so that was something I got from the military. That was big. You're part of something bigger. You need to put your shit aside. There's something more important that you need to be focusing on, because people will die, if you don't. And or you'll die. Like
a lot of it.
So that it's a change in perspective. Learned a ton there.
But but it's good that you still needed the camaraderie, though. Like, that's a big part of it. Like, when we had Gunnery Staff Sergeant Hill on here, he was saying it's major, especially when you're overseas, like the camaraderie. Like, you have to be able to fuck around with the guys in your unit and the guys in your platoon and like fucking make jokes and crack and say inappropriate stuff and not be hamstring front because you're joking with your buddies. Like, that camaraderie is still, it's very much a necessary thing in the military, right? And like, it doesn't matter if, like, they can say something stupid, they don't mean it. They're just joking around, right? And it doesn't change the fact that you guys want to be like, like, you're like going to depend on this guy to save your life maybe one day, like, that camaraderie has a big part of it, right?
Yeah. I mean, camaraderie for sure. But like, you're all like brothers in arms, like all that stuff. But it's also like, it's just mutual respect, I think, is the thing. You have to be able to have some respect for the people that you're working with, and respect that you are, because there's other shit, right? Like, there's other shit that they talk to you about. Like, you could be, not everybody's going to be a good person. It doesn't matter if you're wearing the same uniform or not. And you might be out there with somebody who you do not want to be in a situation with for your own safety. They might pull some shit. Like, there's crazy shit that happens, right? And so I don't know, but you need to be able to trust people. You need to be able to be yourself. And I think for me, part of like being one of the boys or whatever, I felt for a long time after coming out that like I had lost a part of being a man in that sense, and being in that club. And I kind of lost my admission into that club. And for a while I was like, well, screw it. I don't need that. And what it gave me was, I don't have to prove anything to anybody. You know what I mean? Like, I've already, I've done my shit. I still have stuff to prove. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not like, going through basic training doesn't make you any sort of hero, right? Like, there are real heroes in the military, but not just for going through basic training. That's basic for a reason, but it did give me something back where it's like, you know what, like, I don't have to prove anything to anyone. It's just, it is what it is.
So we're looking at 6 hours of your shit right now. So we got to end this sometime. So, so after you got done, we'll just say this: after you got done the military, right? I guess it was the former manager of the coffee shop, the most recent coffee shop that you had before, when you started the Air Arbonne business, right? She got you your current job in real estate, which you're working in now. Yeah. So for me, I just really saw
an opportunity where my skill sets, all this diverse background, all this jumping around really serves itself, because I've just become a person that knows a little bit about a lot of shit. And it helps me relate to people, and everyone needs to live somewhere. I mean, it's just, that's just like at the end of the day, everyone's got to live somewhere. And so I can help people, and I can use my experience just to relate to them and say, hey, oh man, I totally get it. I've been in a stressful situation before, or I've moved before, I've been through a divorce before, or I managed a business before. I get it. Let me help you. Let me work around your schedule. And then within that, I love real estate because I fucking like houses. It's cool. I mean, Zillow porn is real, but I get to go in those places, So, I mean, I've been telling people I work with a lot of buyers, but right now, I can, on any given day, oh yeah. Hey, we're working with the buyers right now. But on any given day, right, I can be touring homes from, 150,000 to, 4 million, right? It's like,
damn.
And it's just like, you get to see all these different neighborhoods. I'm learning more about my city. I'm like every day, I'm learning about different businesses, and I'm getting to use kind of my creativity again so for me, I really enjoy it. I get to connect with people. I get to help them solve a problem. I get to, see some really cool things and be a part of such a big moment in their lives. It's really cool. And then there's also potential to really make a great business out of it and have financial freedom around it. And that for me too is really important. So that's what I like about it.
That seems like something right up your alley. And also it's kind of like when you're giving these homes away, or not giving, or when you're selling these homes and like all these things, these are kind of like the bones of your city. Yeah, this is like the skeleton of your city in a way, and you're kind of learning like your the body parts of your city and different things like that. And that's freaking awesome. I'm not gonna lie. When you said the Zillow porn gimmick, 100% true.
I mean, that's true. Have you seen that SNL?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
there's a whole SNL skit about it.
My wife is all over that stuff. Loves every second. Loves looking at houses that I can't afford. So it's great.
And when it comes to Zillow, it's crazy. Sorry, it's crazy with Zillow. Living here in Southern California, which is like just an insane real estate place. I can't believe how many places I've looked at. My wife and I have been looking for a house for a couple of years and not being able to afford any of them. But it's crazy how many listings have awful photographs, and like it's just the worst photographs on planet Earth. And you go there, and then the place is awesome, and you're wondering.
Have you seen the flip side of that too?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Where
and then there's
they have
pictures
and photographs, and you go there like, this house is freaking tiny. Like
there is I always tell people about this. There's an Instagram account called $1 Million Shitholes, which is it's just listings in LA that look awful. Like they have like porta potties in their front lawn, and they're worth over $1 million, that's an interesting thing people can look up on Instagram.
Alex, really happy to hear that you've got the real estate in there, and it sounds like you have a passion for it and that you're enjoying your job. That's the biggest thing, like enjoying what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like you did have a long freaking road to get there, man. And a long road of like learning different things and like having to adapt and struggle and survive and overcome and like, progress in your whole story. So like you being able to do that and finally end up in a job that you do have some passion for, you're seeing knowledge, you're seeing growth, like you're seeing the potential and everything like that. I'm happy to hear that. And that's great for you, man. And I'm proud of you. And that's awesome. So that being said, we have come to the end of your long goddamn list of jobs, and we didn't even hit all of them. So this is where we're going to wrap. Yeah, we got a lot of them. We're going to wrap up the show here. We've spent 5.5 hours so far with you, and it's just been peachy every second of the way. But no, Alex, I know we've had you on back-to-back weeks, and I think Shake, we're on the same page as this, but we would love to have you back on if you'd like to come back on.
We want Xander on next time.
I feel like people are probably gonna be sick of me at this point. Which
the way we're gonna have a whole month of So the way we're gonna air it, we're gonna split you into 4, and it's gonna be Alex Mania.
Oh wow.
March Xander Mania. So,
Man, hopefully
but
they
no,
like it.
Yeah. People have to pay us to stop the episodes.
Yeah, you're definitely gonna be a requested guest again. So it's gonna be awesome. But Alex, before we go, anything you'd like to say to the dozens and dozens of Working Perspectives podcast fans?
Man, avoid the clap, Jimmy Dugan.
Great send off. Wow. Jake, rattle and roll. Any wisdom you want to impart on our guest before we take off?
Just at some point, we're gonna have to somehow sneak your older brother asshole onto a show and some other people. For one reason. Listen, this is for one good reason. We need to have a retrospective on the Attitude Era wrestlers that we all personified. And I wanted to bring this up with Alex here because he was world famous for his enduring love for the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Okay. And that was an all-time great wrestler. I didn't really have a wrestler that I was assigned to. I guess maybe Sabu. I really identified with Sabu. I love Sabu.
I love Sabu too. You had so many to choose from. Yeah. You know, it's tough. Like I was a big Mick Foley guy too. Loved Mick Foley. Obviously Stone Cold. Yeah, and this is what we should do. One day we should have an episode where we all just talk about the wrestlers that we wanted to personify. Hey, Shake. I'd be happy to have that. More than happy, but all the guests have to be approved. That's just, sorry, can't budge there. And it's not us, it's the PAAA. All right?
Well, or maybe if asshole personifies Sting, he'll come in from the rafters.
Whoa.
And
yeah, that. Whoa, we're gonna have to call Eric Bischoff.
There's an Owen Hart joke in there somewhere, and I'm not gonna make it.
Oh, no one should. All right. So Alex, thanks so much for coming on. Shake, asshole has to be approved before he comes on.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you want to say before we go?
No, Alex, thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. Great to catch up.
Yeah.
Hey guys, te gusta es mío.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Nah, this was great. It's a lot of fun.
Alex, Alex won't even talk to us unless it's on the air like this. That's fucked up in my
Whatever, man.
That is
it's like I don't
you guys, your victim mentality. I'm pretty sure the last time we spoke, I called you. Both of you. All right?
Yeah, we thought something was wrong with Bell. That's why you're calling.
All right. So okay, let me wrap this fucking
what's
thing
wrong?
up.
That's how Matt answers the phone when I call. What's wrong?
It's usually the case. So let's wrap this thing up. Alex, thanks so much for coming on. Shake, great job tonight as always. Matt, perfect as always. Yep. So this has been another episode of the Working Perspectives podcast with our guest, Alex Lavelle. You can find us on all podcast platforms and YouTube at Working Perspectives Podcast. You can find us on Spotify at The Working Perspectives Podcast. You can follow us on the Twitter at Working P Pod. And then join us on Instagram at Working Perspectives Podcast. If you would like to be a guest on the show, email us at workingperspectives@gmail.com. This is the end of the show. Stick around for the ad read. Thanks. Bye. Do you have a message or a story inside of you that you've been waiting to tell? Have you always dreamed of writing a book, but are intimidated by the complexities of the book publishing world? Perhaps you want to use a book to launch your public speaking or consulting career. If so, please reach out to Scott & Bell Publishing, located right here in beautiful Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Scott & Bell Publishing handle all genres and authors with all experience levels. Scott & Bell Publishing gives authors 100% creative freedom and a higher royalty split. They can be found at www.skotbell.com. That's www.S as in Sam, K as in Kite, O as in October, E as in Tom, B as in boy, E as in Edward, ellisandlarry.com. That's Scott and Bell Publishing, where the authors go.